Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Ball and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On our show, here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all of our different coaches, experts and guests their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. Our guest today is quite literally a strong man. Laurence Shahlaei is former Britain's and Europe's strongest man. And really I got the opportunity to talk to him from a bit of a referral from my old barber, which was a fantastic way to get introduced to somebody for the podcast. And it meant that I got to have a great conversation with Lozs without, the back and forth between getting to know one another via email. I really got the opportunity to get to know him, talk about some really cool stuff related to his strongman events, his training, his attempts to recover from injury. I had an all-round fantastic conversation with him, and as always, I hope you guys really enjoy. Do the channel a favour if you can. Like the video, like the podcast, leave a review, share, subscribe, do whatever you can. And as always, get in touch, let us know what guests you'd like on the show, and enjoy. So Lozs, welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast. Thank you for taking time out on a Friday evening to sit and talk to us. I've already joked about how anybody watching this will see that I fill out the screen a lot less than you do. But you're the man for doing this for us. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
So, Lozs, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm going to be 37 on Christmas Day.
Oh, wow, amazing. Oh, cool. Happy birthday for Christmas Day. Do you find that a good thing or a bad thing that therefore, is it more presents to open on Christmas Day, or does your family just always fob you off and say, no, it's Christmas?
I'm pretty lucky that the wife and my mum sort of look after me. So everyone else forgets, but those two make an effort. So it's all good. I'm used to it.
How long have you been World's Strongest Man competing for?
I've qualified for 12 World's Strongest Man competitions. I've competed in 11. I've been doing strongman since 2005.
So in 2005, that would have made you 23.
I was 24 when I started. So
how is it full time? You have to be full time to be at the level you're at.
Full time. I would say I was doing it full time for a while. Right now, I've sort of backed off a little bit. I'm focusing more on coaching, that side of things. I'm still going to compete and that kind of stuff, but I've taken that pressure of trying to make a living just solely from strongman. But I have done it full time for a number of years.
Is it possible to make a living from strongman without being, like, for example, Thor and Eddie and Brian, which are the names that, off the top of my head, I'm like, I assume Thor makes a fortune from his sponsorships and then from being the Mountain. I'm assuming Eddie is doing all right. And I'm assuming that Brian...
There's definitely guys that are doing very well now, those kind of guys that you mentioned. It's always been a tough sport to make a living from. I mean, if you kind of... Notoriously, in the last 10 years, you've probably had 3 guys from the UK that could honestly say they were professional, being Eddie, myself and Terry Hollands. In the last few years, things are improving. I think the fact that the sport's growing so much, social media helps massively. There's more platforms for us to kind of earn some money on now, and you're building a following. A lot of guys have their own merchandise. Things are getting better. There's more opportunities now for guys that are kind of being recognised. And, I've been lucky enough to work in a few films. I've done some advertising things. Had various different sponsors and stuff like that, so you can make a living. There was a time I was kind of doing it, focusing just on competing and trying to earn prize money. That's a really bad way of doing it.
I guess that was what I meant, like it to begin with, because social media was. I know that it's easy to talk about the negatives of social media, but it has afforded people such as yourself and me doing this opportunities which never would have been present 10 years ago. I don't know when Instagram became a thing, but I remember, it being this huge bit when certain celebrities finally had an Instagram account. I remember when Will Smith did his first Instagram post and it was like, oh, wow, Will Smith's on Instagram. And it has given a lot of opportunities for people, hasn't it? But
massively.
I just assumed that if you were a world's strongest man competitor before
Instagram and therefore the ability to be sponsored a little bit easier, not easily, but a little bit easier, it must have been a very, very difficult sport to commit to.
Oh, definitely. You know, when I was trying to, earlier on in my career, if I was just trying to do it through winning prize money, you're having to compete so regularly, which in a sport like strongman isn't smart anyway. And, you know, one bad performance or an injury and suddenly nothing's coming in. So it certainly wasn't the right way of going about things.
Have you,
I'd
have
never
you,
like someone to go down that route.
have injuries, what have you been like with injuries and stuff? Like, have they been a big part of your career?
Yeah, I've kind of been one of the. I mean, all top level athletes get injuries. I've definitely been one of the few that's been affected by many injuries over the years, but I've always managed to kind of bounce back. And as devastating as an injury is, I've evolved and I've learned more, and I've sort of developed. I think as an athlete, I sort of just understand now that it's part of pushing yourself to the limit. A lot of people kind of criticize me for being injured in the past, but I'm pretty smart in the gym. I don't tend to get injured in the gym. It's always in competition. And I kind of try and explain it like a Formula One race, for instance. You know, you can go 5 miles an hour slower and but you'll be out of the race. You might be driving there safer, but you're going to be out of the race. Whereas when you're pushing to win, you're always on the brink of a crash.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's very similar in, any sport. When you're pushing to that absolute pinnacle, there's always a chance you can get hurt. So, especially in a sport like strongman, where we're kind of dealing with such huge weights. But it's funny. The first time you get a really bad injury, it's absolutely devastating, and your whole world comes crumbling down. It is mentally very, very hard. Now I'm almost at the point where I get injured. I'm just like, meh, I can come back. I know the process, and that's how many times I've been injured. So, it's
what kind of things are important in your process for kind of A, preventing injury, but then B, for recovering from one? And the reason I ask is, so my thing I like to do, so I teach martial arts for a living, but then my thing that I guess I do most consistently to keep myself fit, healthy, and so on and so forth is I really enjoy CrossFit training.
Yeah.
And I'm currently trying to find out the best way to manage some back issues. I didn't do anything specific. I think it's probably just some overtraining.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that's been on our podcast is a kinesiologist and a neuropsychologist. He tells me that I have a left-right imbalance. My brain therefore runs some software, which the moment my body does something that I don't like if I try and snatch, it's just a really bad idea. And my hips will go out of line, which then problem after problem after problem. So I would be quite interested to hear how you recover, because your injuries will make my injuries look. If you were injured like me, you'd go, oh, cool. I can go and deadlift like 500 kilos today or whatever it is. But to me, it's been quite a challenge. Yeah. What do you do to avoid injury? What do you do to effectively recover?
I've learned over the years is there's no point in guessing what's wrong with you. And too many people do this. They guess what's wrong with them. They go to a physio who will feel around and essentially guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And until you have a scan and you know exactly what's wrong with you,
okay,
you're just guessing at it. So now, if I get an injury, I go straight to get a scan done, imaging center, and to be honest, I mean, most injuries in strongman, you're looking at muscle tears, muscle strains, occasional kind of, back issues in terms of disc issues. But the most common injuries you get in strongman are ruptures of tendons and muscles. So straight away, I will go and get a scan done, and then I can make a plan of what's needed to do to recover. Because if you're just guessing, and this happens so many times, how many times people come up to me and say, oh, I've got a bad shoulder, I've got a bad elbow, I've got a bad hip. That's great, but we don't know what is causing that and why it's bad. So until you know those, initial reasons, you're just guessing at stuff. And I'd rather recover as quick as possible and know exactly what's wrong, and then you can sort of make a plan of action of what needs to happen now. So
when I tell my girlfriend you've said that, because she's been on at me about going to the doctors.
Yeah.
To talk about having something specific done in terms of finding it out for a while. she's gonna find it so funny when I say that. Yeah, that world's strongest man guy I talked to, so I should go and get a scan.
I've good kind of physios and chiropractors that work with me, but unless they know exactly what it is that's the issue, they could be treating something that's masking the actual issue.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and there's a lot of us can sort of panic because when you do get a scan, it can show up a lot of things, especially if you've done sport for a long time. And 9 times out of 10, our bodies have kind of learnt to adapt and cope with certain issues. Like, for instance, everyone kind of panics when they get a bulging disc. There's, a huge percentage of the population. There's a huge percentage of the population that already have bulging discs that don't even know about it.
Okay.
It's not causing any pain or any, problems in terms of performance. It's only when that disc starts pressing on the nerves and causes that excruciating pain that becomes an issue. And I've got a very, very good chiropractor that works with me that makes sure all my kind of spine's in line. They're making sure that the signal that the brain sends to all the different parts of the body isn't impinged in any kind of joint, so everything fires properly. But in terms of recovering, firstly finding out what's the issue, then making a plan, and it varies for each injury.
With tendons, so I had some shoulder pain for quite a while. And I did see somebody that did diagnose some mild tendonitis. His advice at the time was to rest it for a while first, to then do some strengthening exercises for the supporting muscles, and then to begin to do the movements that you've been avoiding, but under a much lighter load, so that you train blah 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 blah. And that worked really, really well. Like, my shoulder has been fine. It's just sometimes I guess it's difficult depending upon where you might feel you've got a tendon problem. So I know that I can get quite touchy in the elbow area.
Yeah.
I don't know how to apply the same principle, but just the fact that you've said that, first port of call on Monday then will be to...
One of the kind of biggest healing factors is just getting blood around your body. And, obviously, if, for instance, I tore my Achilles this year at World's Strongest Man. I had surgery, it made... major surgery, major kind of injury, and I'm trying to do stuff for my calf and the ankle mobility and the strength of the calf every day almost. I'm trying to do something to just kind of, and not heavy obviously because I can't cope with any heavy weight at the moment, but trying to make sure I'm going through motion, through getting blood around that area, and trying to improve that strength and the condition of the muscles and the tendons every day. If you sit around doing nothing, it tends to just get tight, it stiffens up, and then you get worse.
To track back a little bit, because I was going to ask you this before I pressed record, but I'll ask you now. So the guy that put us in touch with one another, is my former barber. You can clearly see he's not my barber at the minute because this thing is a mess. Did you know Glyn before or after he moved to Dubai and began seemingly becoming Thor's personal barber almost?
I only met him in Dubai this year. He was kind of offered to do all of us our hair, so I took the opportunity. It was great.
He's the man. Yeah, he's one of the nicest guys I've ever known in that sort of context. Like, I tell the story to everybody. I used to go in and he would get the proper barber's blade out, and he'd have to do every line and make sure everything was perfect. I used to be saying to him, Glyn, I'm not bothered. Just want to do my hair and trim it. He's like, Dan, you're not leaving my barber's without proper job done. Yeah. And he would do the hot towel on my face. He'd do the whole 9 yards, and never asked me for the money for it. Just always was super happy to give a quality service. And once I'd seen on the Instagram for Dubai that he'd seen you, he'd seen Thor. I know, did you meet him at World's Strongest Man?
In Dubai this year with the World Ultimate Strongman Championships out there.
Is that what it was? Okay. Because I know that he did something where he fair play to him, because I do the same. He took the opportunity to get pretty much every strongman to do an Instagram video with him. Is it Martin or Martin's Lisses?
Martin's, yeah.
Martin's and Brian and Thor and you and Terry, and I was like, okay, maybe Glyn might be able to help me get one of these super cool guys on the show. What got you into doing strongman?
I was always fascinated with strongman from a very young age. I used to love watching it on TV at Christmas time, like we always have in the UK. you know, kind of, I used to watch guys like Magnus Magnuson,
Yeah.
Sten Carlson, Magnus Samuelsson. And then when I kind of really got a bit older, I watched all the even older shows with like, Jeff Capes, Bill Kazmaier, even, I mean, I've watched every single one, but I was always fascinated by kind of strength and power, superheroes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Arnie films, Sylvester Stallone type films, those kind of things I was always kind of fascinated with as a youngster. So just watching it on TV. And then one year, 2005, I just decided I'm going to join a gym. Joined the gym. 6 months later, did my first competition, and
wow,
the rest is history.
Yeah. What's different nowadays with the way that, in 2019, with social media, with the internet being as it is, like when you started training in 2005,
Yeah.
You will have found it very difficult to gain access to the kind of quality programming and everything that goes with that.
Way harder. I mean, when I started, it was extremely hard to even just find a competition, because unless you were in the know with the right kind of people, you just didn't get an invite. And I managed to find this, like, a novice competition online. It's the only one I could find. Searching, loads of searching. I managed to find this competition down kind of right in the kind of, what was it, Bexley Heath area. It was
okay.
There's a guy running some kind of novice shows, and I managed to enter it. Drove down to the competition, got out of the car, and I said to my partner at the time, "Let's go home," because there was these monsters all around there. I thought I was going to get my ass kicked, but it was 38 guys in the competition, and I came 8th, I think.
I knew you were going to say you finished really well. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have carried on. So that's cool.
4th place, and it was like a medley. They had to do some farmers walk, which has always been a good event for me anyway. Had to do a few other bits, and then we had to finish by loading an Atlas stone onto a platform. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I ended up on my knees trying to roll this stone ball on top of me. It was not. I really didn't know what I was doing.
I watched a video that Eddie did with Ross Edgley. Who do you know who Ross is?
No.
I don't know if you've seen this. Ross was the guy that swam around Great Britain last year.
Cool. Yeah.
And Ross has got a very decent following, social media, YouTube, etc., etc. And I know that Eddie's been working hard to build that kind of following himself. I'm sure doing very well. And basically, Eddie and Ross were at. Oh no, I'm going to butcher the name now. What's the gym in Stoke?
Oh, the Strength Asylum.
Yeah, so that's near us. I'm not far from there, like 45 minutes.
It's a good gym. I've trained there a few times.
Eddie was trying to get Ross to lift a stone.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to learn, for example, the classic mistake people make is they start lifting these stones with their biceps.
Yeah.
Than hugging it and using your body. And Eddie's like, I think you best stop, Ross, because otherwise your biceps are going to be in 2 pieces. And he was like, oh, really? And it's like, yeah, they had an eating competition, and I think Ross was able to eat more calories than Eddie, if you can believe that.
I heard about that.
So yeah, like what would you say are the most important differences, do you think, in terms of like your all-round ability to be a successful strongman in 2019 versus even just 5 or 10 years ago?
It's so many more opportunities now for people, with social media. If you're just looking to make a living, you don't even need to be any good. You need to be entertaining. You need to be entertaining, and you need a following. You need to be able to sell to people. But in terms of just competition, there's so much more information available. So, I've set up an online coaching business because, of social media, basically. Obviously, I've been lucky enough to work with some incredible people. I've got a background in strength and conditioning. So the coaching side of things is something I've done for a long time. And now I'm sort of pushing a lot harder. And people have access to people like myself that can actually help them and make sure they don't make the same mistakes that, say, I was making early on in my career. Because I made a few, I made quite a few. And I wish I could sort of have someone like me guiding me when I was, 23 years old. It would have made a big difference. But when I was starting, you go to the gym, try and find a few strong guys in the gym, and they beast you in the gym. And, that was it. You didn't really have access to how many amazing athletes are out there. And, trade knowledge and learn things so easily. Like the information that we have now is just at the fingertips, whereas back then it was a lot harder to find anything.
What
It was different, there was no strongman equipment to train on back then, whereas now almost every gym has loadable equipment that you can use. So there's been a lot of big changes, and the popularity of the sport. I mean, the women's side particularly. When I started, you had like 1 or 2 women that did it. Now you get hundreds of girls that compete, different weight classes. Again, when I started, there was literally the big open guys. That was it. Now you've got under 105s. You sometimes have under 120s. You have under 90 kilos, under 80. I've even seen an under 70 kilo class. This is just for men, and as well as the different weight classes for women. Disabled competitions, masters competitions. There's just so much. It's just become so much more accessible for people, and it's great. I love the fact there's so many more people doing it, and it's seeing the sport grow. It's a good thing.
Well, they fill stadiums now in the UK, right? I think Stoke City Stadium is a popular one because obviously it's.
It used to be Headingley Stadium. They did, and then they do the First Direct Arena in Leeds. There's Manchester Arena. We've done Wembley. They're going to compete at the Royal Albert Hall next year. So yeah, big kind of iconic venues.
What things do you? So speaking of, let's say for example, like the access to information. Outside of specific training protocols, what other things would you say that you take the most advantage of now? Like, I don't know, like recovery or I bet the guys that you watched from 30 years ago didn't even know what mobility and stretching was. But I imagine you probably have to do a lot of that now to stay.
There's a lot more kind of scientific kind of approach these days than back in the kind of back in the day you had a guy that was, say, a powerlifter, a guy that was a track and field athlete, a rugby player, and they'd all kind of come together and compete in a competition that was called strongman. Whereas now, you have people that train specifically for strongman. You'll have recovery days just focusing on, ice baths, heat baths, physio, various. I've got loads of kind of little gadgets that help with recovery. And they're all important factors, but I do think sometimes people kind of focus too much on those things that help that 1% rather than getting the basic things right.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
At an elite level, that's when those things become important. But I think too many novice guys focus so much on that. I mean, I've got something called Compex, which is great for recovery. Got a lot of CrossFit use it. Really good. My Achilles. Really good if you've got injuries. You can use it in the gym to help stimulate muscles and stuff. But getting your kind of sleep, your hydration, your food, and your training right is still the fundamentals that will get you good in this sport particularly. And
I like that you said sleep.
Sleep's important. It's when you're recovering. If you're not sleeping, then it's harder to rebuild the muscles and recover from training. But I always try and focus on those 4 things, and then everything else is like on top of that. And I would put those 4 things as the 95%. And then 5% is the various different treatments you can get. Guys going as far as like hyperbaric chambers, ice heat therapy. There's loads and loads. Like there's kind of these things called the squid, which are kind of compression patches that you kind of put over your legs, your arms, and they're kind of they send like cooling liquid through. But they're all things that they help that tiny little bit, and that 1%, 2% matters at the top level. It does. It makes a difference.
It's second that final. What does the final Atlas stone often weigh at the finals?
It's usually around 200 kilos.
So the difference between winning and losing the event can be half a second getting that last stone up, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the year Eddie Hall won World's Strongest Man, there was you're talking like 1 or 2 reps here or there, a split second there on something else, and someone else might have won. And it's the same every year in every competition. Little margins make a huge difference at that level, like they would in a 100-meter sprint. You're talking hundredths of a second. It's not like all these guys are elite level. It's not like competing if a football player going to play a Sunday league player. It's you're all kind of UEFA.
Did Martins win this time? Sorry, did Martins win this time?
Yes, he did.
It's not been on the TV this last one, has it?
6 months, I guess.
It's always really far behind. Like I feel like when you're on social media, you get to find out who won, and then
something I'm quite vocal about, and I don't agree with the way it's on TV now, especially with the way we have social media. YouTube, people find out instantly. It's just ridiculous. But if you think the Britain's Strongest Man happened in January, and we still haven't seen it on TV yet.
Yeah, it's strange, very strange. I end up seeming to come across a lot more of it because I follow on Instagram. I follow the Rogue account because Rogue are massive into their CrossFit, but they obviously are also a big sponsor of the Strongman at the Arnold. Is it called Arnold Classic? I think is it called Arnold Classic?
Yeah, Arnold Classic. They're one of the main sponsors there.
What's the difference between all the different deadlift bars that I often hear talked about? So there's an elephant bar, and then there's like, does Eddie still hold the actual most well-recognized record, or has he been beaten now?
No, he still holds the deadlift world record. Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of all the different types of.
Yeah, Thor won one with a different bar, I think.
You've got the elephant bar which they use at the Arnolds. You've got a standard bar is from like 9 inches, standard weights. That's the record that Eddie holds. The elephant bar is a much longer bar that has a lot more flex. Saying that, Eddie actually pulled more on a standard bar than anyone has yet on the elephant bar. But then you had like the Hummer deadlift, which I think Zadrunas may still be the record holder in, which is another different bar again. So it does become very confusing if you're not sort of really knowledgeable.
It does, yeah. Because I obviously, it's nice to take some national pride in Eddie and that he has that record. And like when you watch that video of him lifting that flipping bar, it just pumps you up the way that it's so amazing. So when I remember seeing like, oh, this deadlift record's been broken, I was like, really? Well, why is it on an elephant bar then? Why? Like, what does that mean? And okay, so I'm glad you cleared that up. So I'd love to hear, if you have any, of your what are your go-to sat around the Christmas table stories about your classic strongman memories? Are there any that you can share with us that you could?
Probably a few that I can't share. I've been lucky enough to kind of travel all over the world, and you make friends with a lot of these guys, and we've had some good fun times together. But I think some of those stories need to stay private.
I thought you were going to say that, but I figured I'm not going to get many opportunities to ask that question to someone like you, so I figured it was worth an ask. So looking at what you want to do moving forwards then, Loz, you mentioned, of course, that, at the moment, shall we say, you're putting less pressure on yourself. And I think, obviously, since Glyn sort of connected us, I've spent more time keeping an eye on what you've been talking about on social media. And I noticed, of course, I know you say that you're lifting lighter weights, but your lighter weights still make my heavy weights
look. I'm recovering from injury, so I'm not kind of anywhere near my strongest. But I'm going to do a powerlifting competition in March, so I'm going to build up towards that. Because right now, with my ankle, my Achilles, my issue is I can't extend up onto my toes. I can't do like a calf raise, if you like, on the bad leg. But feet flat-footed, I'm fine. So I can squat, I can deadlift, I can bench press. I can train absolutely fine, but I can't do the moving events in strongman. I can't do push pressing, come up off your heels. Those type of moves. I can't pull trucks at the moment. So I'm not going to rush back into strongman until my body's going to allow me to do those things effectively. Because essentially, I'd be at a huge disadvantage. And I think because I've been at such a high level, I have no interest in competing at anything other than my best. Winning is not the main focus, but I want to be able to compete at my best or better. Otherwise, I really don't have any interest in competing. I could go to an intermediate comp tomorrow and win, but it's just not interesting. There's no motivation in that. So I've challenged myself in a different area. I'm doing some arm wrestling. I'm going to do some powerlifting. I'm focusing a lot on other, clients. I've got a number of great young up and coming guys that I'm training. I've got complete beginners through to, international level guys and girls. Really like the kind of diversity, and I've got some people that they just want to get more confident at lifting in the gym. Other people want to be world's strongest man, and it's great working with a kind of different spectrum of people just wanting to get stronger.
Who've been your favourite your competitors? Like, who are your favourite people to compete against, and why do you think? Who are the best dudes that I couldn't wait to compete with them, or they brought the best out in me, or do you mean like who's been the real standout?
Interesting question. I mean, if it was like who's my kind of friends in strongman, who do I like being around? It's different to who I feel like I want to compete against. Zydrunas, to me, has always been the greatest strongman of all time, especially in his prime. And that's someone you know, he set the bar, and he was the guy that I wanted to try and be as good as. So I always enjoyed competing with him. It was always good when I was younger competing with Mariusz Pudzianowski, because again, he was
amazing.
Guys like Brian Shaw, Hafthor, Eddie, you know, they're all such great athletes, and you know you've got to bring your A game if you want to sort of, you know, be competitive.
What were the ones that I think you mentioned that farmers carries have always been a strength for you?
Yeah.
Where would be the places, like, if you could wave a magic wand and you could add a 20% improvement, that, you know, then you would be sat there going, oh, I've literally got what it takes this year to win World's Strongest Man. What are your, not weaknesses, but you know what I mean? Like, where, like, because there's so many events, and you watch ones where some people can stand out in one end, like the log press, for example. Like that weight and the way that the human spine moves in that event when you guys are doing it, I'm like, oh, like what are your ones that you would give your right arm to be better at, like, and then you think it'd make the difference for you? Do you think?
I think for myself to like have a chance of winning World's Strongest Man, my Atlas stones would need to be 20% better, and my pressing would need to be better. Those are two areas that through my whole career have never been quite good enough. My press, I mean, I got to British record level in log lifting and axle and stuff like that, but at the very pinnacle at world level, it was just a little bit off the very, very best guys, and same with the Atlas stones. That being said, I've improved a lot over the years, but because of injuries and other things,
I was going to say that's where your Achilles, like, you would not, log press would be almost suicidal for you to try right now, I imagine, because you've got
it would be stupid to try, especially like heavy weights. So I may start doing some very light stuff again, like we spoke about earlier, just to help with the recovery and get their confidence in the certain movements. But going to a competition, like I said earlier, I mean, I could go to an open level comp in England and still do all right. But people are saying, why aren't you competing at Britain's Strongest Man? I would come last in Britain's Strongest Man at the moment, and I'd rather give someone else that space, because my body's just not physically allowing me to do what I want to do. If I'm hoping by sort of the summertime, you know, I can start competing again and look at maybe picking and choosing a show. So I've got events that I can do in, but it is a tough injury to come back from, and I will try and do everything I can. But I just don't want to put that pressure on myself. I've got to be back by this time, and then come back.
You'll make some decisions, I imagine. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. What, just out of curiosity, you know, when you say you would lift light weights and something like the log press, to you, being a guy that before your injury you were at world level, and that's where you want to get back to. So, like you say, you're not motivated to compete at anything less than that, because that's where you deserve to be. What's the lightweight for you getting back into the gym on log press?
When I started squatting and deadlifting, coming back from this injury, my first squat session was 120 kilos. Which is really light.
Oh yeah, so light.
Well, this week I squatted 250. So and that's in 2 months. I've gone from 120 to 250. But my best
for reps.
That was for reps. But my best squat. I mean, I've done 250 kilos at my best for 20 reps on a squat, and you know I've squatted over 400 kilos. So for me, it's still light weights, but it does feel heavy at the moment. You know, I'm nowhere near my strongest. But each week, it's all about building that confidence, developing that strength, and you know, coming back stronger. I deadlifted 300 kilos yesterday, which for me again is light, but it feels heavy at the moment because I'm you know, coming back from injury. I'm not strong, but it's all relative. Not strong for me is still tremendous.
That's why I thought that, because it's really funny. Like, because in the CrossFit scene, you know, the things I've always enjoyed doing have been the more body weight, gymnastic-y type stuff, because I've had a fairly decent power to weight ratio.
Yeah.
But like every single year when they've done the CrossFit Open, certain exercises come up and certain weights come up. Yeah. The guys that are at world level, just like it's like this for repetitions.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting like, you know, dying a slow death just because it's not been my strong point. But you know, I did karate from when I was 8 years of age. Like, I didn't need to have big legs to do karate. Almost the opposite. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like CrossFit I know people love to slate CrossFit. You know,
I love CrossFit. I'm a big fan of CrossFit.
But I think it's super cool that, you know, it gives you, if nothing else, it gives you a better appreciation for what you do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, we've
people,
done
especially the women's side of things, they come from CrossFit. They've enjoyed the strength sessions in CrossFit, and they decided they want to focus more on that for their training, which is great. But you know, guys like Matt Fraser, he's incredibly strong for his size. Tia Toomey, she's putting like powerlifting numbers for her weight. You know, incredible athletes, and they're so well rounded as athletes as well. So
yeah, Tia Toomey is one of them where, like, because I've wanted, so always liked Katrin, who beat Tia 2 years in a row, but like only just.
Yeah.
And then I really liked Sarah, and basically everyone I really liked. Tia
just really like the hot blonde kind of Icelandic.
No, we don't need to talk about that, Loss. No, that's not what it is at all. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like
I like them too, so it's all right.
Yeah, they are amazing. I remember seeing it was basically, it's like this Road to the CrossFit Games video one year that was Annie and Katrin, and they have their gym in Reykjavik in Iceland. And I remember her saying on the video that apparently like a taxi driver turned up there once, dropping a bunch of people off, saying it's the second most requested taxi drop off in Iceland now. So if people go, you can see why they're going, because they want to use their CrossFitters. Do you know what I mean? So like when you're, with regard to your coaching now, then what we sort of briefly touched on it about how you have got what you believe is the 95% that people should focus on. Let's say that my back was good and I wanted to start, I was inspired by talking to you to start adding some more strongman related stuff. What are the low-hanging fruit that I can start doing in the gym that are going to make the biggest difference to me in my training from a strongman perspective?
So the main important movements for strongman are big compound movements. So anything where you're using multi-joint movements, squats, overhead pressing, bench press, deadlifts, bent over rows. Olympic lifts are good, but they're harder to teach. So
yeah, they are.
They can take a lot more kind of work, and a lot of people do them badly, but done well, they're a very effective movement. But I like big compound movements. I find, that's how you're going to get strong. The difference between powerlifting and strongman is you need that conditioning and you need that endurance. With powerlifting, you need to be exceptionally good technically for one rep. In strongman, you need to be able to adapt very, very quickly to so many different things and variables. Because in strongman, you've got the equipment to cope with, which is normally different in every competition. You've got the environment to cope with as well. So you could do a squat, a squat in a powerlifting comp, you're going to get perfect kind of flooring. The bar is going to be lovely. A lot of competitions now have monoliths, so you don't even have to move your feet. Whereas in strongman, you could be in a car park that's slanting slightly to the left, using an axle with blistering kind of sunshine on you. Or
what was the one as well that was at the last televised World's Strongest Man? There was one where the guys were stood holding onto a bar, so it was essentially they were deadlifting. But basically behind them they were being dumped in big kegs.
The kegs, yeah.
Like Jesus, like talk about being able to stabilize your body. Like they were at different angles. They moved when you were lifting it.
Even worse, because you've got the squat still on your back as the kegs go in, and you feel it thudding in every time another one goes in.
And what was the thing that Rogue made that was at the Arnold Classic last time? Like you pushed it round.
Yeah, that looked really cool.
That thing was ridiculous. Like so would you say then as well? How you mentioned that deal with these low-hanging fruit first, the rest can come after. Are things like trying to prepare for pulling a truck or pushing that thing around or all those, do they come way later for you then as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what part of people's kind of, where people are in their kind of lifting career, if you like. For a beginner, so I've got a few really young lads. My youngest athlete is 15, very young. Our main focus with him at the moment is technique, making sure he's lifting safely and effectively. So he's not using loads and loads of weight. It's more about improving his movement, and the weights will come once he's kind of like, really efficient at the way he moves. Whereas guys that are competing at a top level and preparing for competitions, we're going to be getting them doing a lot more specific event training, conditioning them for the events that they've got coming up in a contest. And like what I mean, even for myself, I have like off-season training and then I have comp prep training. And in the off-season, it's mainly just stuff in the gym. But then when you find out your events for competition and you then adapt your training, it becomes more specific. So if you've got to do a log, for instance, for your press, that becomes your implement that you're going to press in the gym. You need to do, if you need to get your fitness up, because some competitions aren't quite as heavy, they're a bit more fitness based. You'll focus on being a bit more conditioned. Other competitions are really, really heavy and static. You need to bring your weight up and just focus on that power. So it's all about being as specific as possible and preparing for the eventual kind of, outcome. And the thing with strongman, unlike some sports, there's so many possible events that you could end up doing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of there's guys out there I think that are really good. You could chuck any events at them and they'll do well. I'd actually put myself in that bracket. You could chuck any events at me without knowing, and I'd do well. Guys like Zdrunas would do well. Guys like Kidiaskowski would do well. Guys like Thor would
He's one of the new guys, right?
He is.
Like,
exceptional.
Yeah, I think.
But then there's guys that need to know the events, and if they're well prepared, they can also do very well. But they won't do as well if they don't. If you just chuck them in kind of with some random events. And weirdly, I find like Lissis is a bit like that. He's an incredible athlete that when he's well prepared, he's unbelievable. If you kind of surprised him with some weird events, I think he'd struggle more.
Looking from an outside perspective as well, because I think I started getting back into it again over the last kind of 3 or 4 years, because some of the guys in Strongest Man, like talking about CrossFit, do you know who Ben Smith is?
Yes, yeah.
So Ben Smith won back in 2015, and then that was when Matt Fraser's last time being second. Matt's now won it every year since then. Yeah. And Ben did a really, really cool, like 2 or 3 or 4 videos with Brian at Mark Bell's Super Training Gym. And that was a great way to go, oh no, I like this CrossFit guy. Okay, cool, he's spending time with a strongman. That's a great video to watch. Yeah. And I think it got me back into it. What's been up with Brian the last couple of times? Like, he set really high standards. He's won. Is he top 5 all-time strongest man winners? Has he won 5 or 6? He's
second. He's currently the joint second on all-time list. So Marin Puganovsky has the most, and then you've got Zdrunas, Brian, and Magnus Ver all on 4 titles.
But Brian looks to have been. I don't know if he's been unlucky with injuries or if this is a ridiculously naive, uneducated question I'm asking because I've not watched it intently enough. But he looks to have struggled. And Brian seems like a super cool guy, and I like seeing him do well.
And he's a very kind of methodical athlete. He's very, very smart, prepares very well. I've said this in my own kind of YouTube videos before. I think Brian doesn't have the same hunger that he used to. I think that's different. People have kind of criticised diets and stuff like that. And sure, he's had a couple of injuries, and I understand injuries, but Brian's focus is his YouTube page, which is doing very, very well. He's making a lot of money through that. He's already won everything there is to win in strongman. He's a 4 times world's strongest man. He's now got kids. He's married. Your priorities change. And this isn't a criticism on Brian. I just don't when Brian was at his best, he hated losing. Absolutely hated it with a passion. He's a great guy, but when he lost, he was a miserable sod. And he didn't hide it. He just didn't hide it at all. Whereas now when he loses, he's still pretty friendly, has a smile on his face. He's like, it is what it is. Life's good for him. He's making good money. He's got a lovely family.
I'm pretty sure one of his latest YouTube videos is him building a $500,000 home gym.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I've heard rumours about what he's making through just his YouTube page. So he's doing very well for himself.
So, Loz, I told you I wouldn't keep you much longer than 9 p.m, right? Yep. We're racking up towards 10 to, and it goes that fast when I'm having a good time. I normally try and wrap things up with 3 questions, right? Okay. And I'm super intrigued to hear what your answers are to these. They're basically just all kind of wellness related, for want of a better word. So, obviously, what you would have done to keep your physical wellness where you wanted it to be when you started strongman training will have been very different to what it was when you began feeling confident to compete at the world level. And I imagine it changes again as you get older. Like, I don't know what the oldest competitor is. Like, Zydrunas looks one of the oldest. I think he's often talked about on commentary as one of the oldest.
The oldest is a guy called Mark Felix.
Of course, Mark.
Mark is 54.
Mark's a ledge.
53. Mark is 53. He's the oldest top level guy still competing.
Okay. So that sort of changes my question a little bit, but at the same time, what are your tenets? You know, what things are non-negotiable for you in terms of keeping physically well, doing what you do for life?
I think when you look at guys like Mark, he has a good amount of balance in his life. He doesn't kind of get consumed just by strongman, you know. And I try and be quite a lot like that. And I think when I was younger, particularly, it becomes everything. You sort of let it consume you, and it's everything. Mm-hmm. And I actually got better when I sort of realised there's more to life than just strongman.
Yeah.
And I took that kind of, you know, I've always done strongman for fun. I started it because I enjoyed it. That's not the same for everyone. Not everyone does it because they enjoy it. You know, there's a lot of people out there, they do it because, especially now with social media and stuff like that, they want to be, want a better word, famous. You know, they want that Instagram fame or whatever. I did this way before, you know, there was a time you just didn't go in the gym with a phone. You didn't record your stuff.
I bet, yeah.
Guys just beasted me. I used to love it and just used to try and, you know, and even now, all I want to do is focus on improving myself. And I said earlier, I don't want to compete unless I'm at my best or getting better. And that is my goal, is to always, you know, improve myself. And I think one of the things that helps, especially we're talking like wellness and kind of, you know, mental health, if you like, and stuff like that.
That was the next question. How dare you jump the gun?
Sorry for jumping the gun. But this is we've spoken about the great things about social media. So, you know, the information that's available to us, the ability to kind of, you know, speak to people, to watch things, to be inspired is great. But also, there's too many people they'll see social media and they compare themselves to other people. And the big problem with that is we all know there's a lot of kind of, you know, hiding a bit behind social media. We don't all have the, you know, the perfect life that people post up on there. And, you know, I've got so many youngsters now, they're going, oh, I'm never going to be strong enough. This guy's doing this. These guys are doing that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, focus on your own progress. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Be inspired by other people. That's great. But don't let what someone else is doing affect your outcome, you know, in a negative way. And there's so many guys out there that, you know, they get themselves down. They kind of feel like they're the pressure. I mean, I've suffered with mental health issues before myself. And it's very easy to sort of always look at what other people are doing. The best thing you can do is get out there, focus on improving yourself. And, you know, you can have those ultimate goals of wherever you want to be, but then break it down into smaller chunks to make it more manageable, and just keep improving yourself. That's how I kind of stay mentally.
One of the really interesting things about that is, like, I've often heard it said that, like, motion creates emotion. And I don't think it's an accident that if you're on social media and you're comparing yourself to other people and that's having a negative effect on you, you are inevitably sat still. Sat still, not moving, not in the gym doing what you can do, not at work doing what you can do, not spending time with your partner, your family, your friends, doing things. Yeah. So like you say, if every person that comes to you and says, oh, Lars, like, you know, if you went, okay, cool, no worries, like, get your lifting belt on, let's squat. I imagine 10 reps into whatever weight you've got them putting on their back, they're not thinking about what that person on social media is doing anymore.
You'll get, I mean, the worst. I've got a few clients that are very kind of affected by it. The kind of what other people are doing, they let affect them way too much. But you get them in the gym and they have a great session and they feel great, and then they'll go and look on social media and someone's done more, someone's done an extra rep, or you know, someone's got a better car, or someone's got a better house, or whatever it is. Everyone's different. You've got to focus on your own progress. And like you say, if you're worrying about all these other things, and I don't want to stand here and say I know best, because I've been in that situation where you let it affect you and you sort of, you know, you let things get on top of you. But honestly, just from experience, the best thing is focusing on your own progress, whatever it might be, whether it's, you know, in work, in kind of business, in relationships, whatever. it might be. There's no point in comparing to other people, past situations, etc.
You said the best word though when you talked about what you used to do, and you said you let it affect you.
Yeah.
That's the important distinction, I think. Like you take ownership of that decision. And there's sometimes if you let yourself be affected by things, if you let yourself have a bad day, if you let yourself have whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. It's
just human.
Longevity is the difference, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
You don't let it get into that spiral where it drags you down and down and down. It's, you've got to kind of, like you say, actually go and do something.
So to kind of last, I think, 3 questions? What else have you got going on at the minute that you might want to direct any people who know you, follow you, blah blah blah? What's kind of cracking off with Lozs at the minute? The coaching we've talked a lot about. What else is going on?
Obviously, I've spoken about kind of the online coaching that I do. So if anyone wants to kind of check out my website, which is laurenshahlaei.co.uk. Taking on
we'll stick it in the show notes as well, so people can just.
I enjoy kind of doing the YouTube videos. I don't have a huge following or anything on there, but I enjoy doing them, and I've got quite a good loyal kind of fan base that enjoy the videos. I'm not like the flashy kind of guy that some guys you go for the being funny, be entertaining and flashy and stuff. I'm the real guy, There's guys out there that will kind of say they're eating 20,000 calories a day or whatever, and I'm the guy that will tell you the truth, and I'm not afraid to tell the truth.
That's cool.
A lot of people just want the kind of the shock factor, if you like. But I'm enjoying that kind of side of things. Training wise, like I said, I'm going to be competing in Tattooed and Strong, which is a push-pull powerlifting competition in March. Just very slowly starting to build up for that now.
Where's that being held?
That's in Manchester.
Okay.
It's a big kind of powerlifting comp in the UK. I won it in 2016, and I went on to win Europe's Strongest Man that year. So I'm doing it again. Hoping that
Good omen, hopefully.
Well, hopefully, I'm hoping to win it again. We'll see how my progress goes. I'm the kind of person that needs a challenge. So sometimes if I don't have that end goal, I just sort of go to the gym. I'm like, oh, what shall I do today? And then I get lazy with my diet and stuff like that. So this, having entered it, I'm being good now with the nutrition. I'm training harder. I'm kind of focusing, how I should be, and enjoying it as well. I'm not putting, I say I want to win, and I do, but I'm kind of old enough to appreciate that life goes on if you don't win. But and I'm just enjoying it. I focused on. I want to beat what I did last time at it, and I'm just having fun. I've got 3 kids, a wife. We're pretty busy with a lot of other things, so things are good right now.
How do you keep that balance with, missus and 3 children? Not just 1, not just 2, 3 children to try and be a father, be a husband or a partner, and also be a strongman and a business owner and.
For instance, just like this last week, I was away all last weekend working. I was up in Manchester Friday. I was at an event, but just kind of in Chester on the Saturday, at a gym opening on the Sunday. I had a seminar. I got home at 6 at night. And then at 7 p.m., my wife had to go away for work. She was away for 3 days, like 3 nights anyway. And I'm left to look after the kids and stuff like that. So we're always like balancing things, but we try and make time, and we'll always take the kids out when we can to do something. When they're at school and nursery and stuff like that, or late at night, that's when I'm getting work done. My wife is currently packaging up things right now. We've got like a Black Friday sale on my website, so she's kind of busy working over there. Yeah, we're always busy, but we're doing well.
Is this why you were so happy to get this podcast put in now, Lars?
Yeah,
so that you
basically just before you came along, I was frantically signing things for her.
So people can find you. So there's the website, there's the YouTube. You look pretty active on Instagram.
Big Lozs WSM on Instagram. Yeah, my website, laurenshahlaei.co.uk. And Facebook as well. I'm on there as well, aren't I? Yeah.
Cool. And lastly, I was going to ask you, where do you train? Where's your gym?
So I train at a place called Pro Strength and Fitness in Swindon.
Okay.
It's a decent gym. It's a good bodybuilding gym. I am looking at opening up my own training facility probably within the next kind of 6 months with something kind of probably around Gloucestershire area.
Okay.
With my brother. So that's something we're looking into as well. So yeah, keep it pretty good. Right?
Loz, you're the man for coming on and doing this once again. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And maybe we'll do this again. We didn't even get to touch on diet and nutrition and how many calories a guy like you must eat. So let's save that for next time. And thanks for being with us.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me.
This is Dan Ball from Wellness Academy. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. You'll find a link on the episode notes. Just tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see some offers from our sponsor, Lichfield Apart Hotel. Find them at lichfieldaparthotel.com, and we hope you'll support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. Another way to support us is to answer a short survey at yourwellnessacademy.co.uk/survey and tell us what wellness topics you'd like to hear about. I'm your host, Dan Ball. Our producer is Scott Towns, created by our executive producer, Ben Heathcote for Wellness Academy.